Hello, and this is Brian Foster. Welcome to our YouTube video. We are doing Diego's NDE, near death experience, part 3. Oh, the I've done part 1 and part 2 talking about Diego and what he saw when he went in, when he first went up into the levels of heaven, and how he learned about other people he would see in his future life. And now we're talking about his guardian angel. We're going to talk about guardian angels in general. So what I'm bringing to you is Diego's NDE, and this is one of my chapters in my book, The Spirit World Talks to Us: 12 Accounts from Near Death and Other Experiences. First, I'd like to ask everyone, if you could, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and hit the bell if you want to be notified when I live stream like this. You can always ask me questions as I'm talking about whatever I am. I will live stream every Tuesday. That's my plan right now. So feel free to join me and ask questions as we go. I will stop and ask anything if it's off tangent a bit. So what we do in here is we take near-death experiences and we interpret them by Spiritism. And Spiritism was brought to you in the 1850s, and this was Allan Kardec's first book, the Spirit's book. He is the consoler. He's responsible for codifying the third revelation from the Spirit of Truth. It is unbelievable what it tells us about the spirit world. And what I do is I take near-death experiences and I expose what people who've gone through a near-death experiences, what's really happened on the other side of the curtain for them. So let's get started with the near-death experience by Diego. And now let's talk about guardian angels. They are real, and each of us has one. They are always with us. They may not be physically next to us. Sometimes they are, and they're also able to communicate and know what's going on even far from us. So doesn't the word guardian angel, the mere word conveys a warm feeling to your body, as if your favorite cozy blanket was covering you on a cold day, bringing warmth and comfort. Diego was able to commune with a high spirit who may have been his guardian angel. All of us do, as I said before, in fact, have a guardian angel, a mentor who guides us in our path to improvement. Spiritism notifies us that we are always watched, viewed with love and kindness, sometimes from afar and other times very close and intimate. So let's reveal. So Diego talked to this high spirit. Now let's talk about what that high spirit, that guardian angel, really is all about. Now, what we're going to tell you, this is all information from Spiritist authors, Spiritist mediums who talk to high spirits, who are all part of a team that is led to bring Spiritism to the world. Now, the spirit Zabdiel communicated with the Reverend G. Val Owen in 1913 about his spirit guide. So Zabdiel is a high spirit. He is a high spirit on the 10th level of heaven. It's pretty high up. And I'll be like, I get to the first level of heaven when I go. So he's very high up. So everyone has a guardian angel. Now, at first, the presence of a guardian angel for one who is already in heaven, doesn't that seem a bit out of place? But that type of thinking is self-centered for us here on earth. We are spirits encased in a physical body. The majority of our immortal existence will be in the spirit world, the other world. Our goal is to send up the levels of heaven to one day become a pure spirit. Hence, we require mentors to assist our quest, not only when we are on the physical plane, but also in the spirit realm. Now, the spirit Zabdiel describes the time when he was standing on high mountains at the upper limits of the 10th level of heaven. He was peering across a valley to the mountains that were the beginnings of the 11th level of heaven. First, I'd like to stop right there. So the spirits that talked to the Reverend G. Val Owen said, we're just going to use this numbering system for the different levels of heaven. Other people may use other different numbering systems. And these things don't have a definite boundary. They could go up and down. And so this is the numbering system they use when they talk to the Reverend G. Val Owen. So if you've heard other numbering systems, that's quite okay, because it's these things are fuzzy, right? It's not like, it's just like, here is nothing's black and white. There are little zones in between, and you can categorize them in different ways. So, but when I talk about different levels of heaven, I always talk about the Reverend G. Val Owen, and that's what they use. So it's a reference point. And the 10th level of heaven is where you go from the 10th level. Then when you go to the 11th level, you've graduated kind of from the bounds of learning, and you're actually going to actually do things to help guide human races, guide the geography, guide plants and animals in either Earth or other planets. You're actually going to you've graduated from some sort of school, and you're actually going to be given something. Not that you're not given important things to do in other levels of heaven around the Earth, but you're helping determine many more important things. So Zabdal describes a time when he was standing on high mountains at the upper limits of the 10th level of heaven. He was peering across a valley to the mountains that were the beginnings of the 11th level of heaven. He liked to go there to meditate and to feel the presence of his sphere and the sphere above him. From that vantage point, he could feel the all embracing love of the divine's universe. Zabdiel tells the Reverend G. Val Owen what happened. This is what he says. I'll quote Zabdiel now. Once I stood thus with my face turned towards my future home, I closed my eyes, for the intensity of light as it moved before me was more than I could bear continuously. It was there I first was permitted to see and speak to my guide and guardian. He stood upon the summit over against me, opposite, and the valley was between. When I opened my eyes, I saw him there as if he had suddenly taken on a visible form for me, that I might see him the more plainly. And so it was indeed. And he smiled on me and stood there watching me in my perplexity. He was clad of glittering silk-like tunic to the knees, and round his middle was a belt of silver. You can take a drink. His arms and legs below were bare of covering, and seemed to glow and give forth his light of his holiness and purity of heart. And his face was the brightest of all. He wore a cap of blue upon his hair, which was like silver just turning into gold, and in the cap shone the jewel of his order. I had not seen one of this kind before. It was a brown stone and emitted a brown light, very beautiful and glowing with the life which was all about us. At last, come over to me, he said, and I was thereupon afraid, but not with any terror, but rather abashed of awe. In that way I feared not else. So that's the end of Zabdal's quote. So there's a lot of interesting things here. One, let's talk about what they wear. You read that a lot, as they wear like a tunic, right? They like it, imagine what the Romans wore, right? Which is a, a you know a shirt, right, with kind of that goes all the way down to their knees, and with a belt around the waist, a long shirt. And so that's really what a tunic is. They over and over again they'll have a jewel. They'll have a jewel on his and somewhere on his cap, maybe his hat he wears, or on his tunic, and that usually tells him what order he belongs to. So it's interesting how they do that. And they have all different colors and you can tell what person, that the type of task and type of order that person belongs to, by the color of jewel that they are wearing or emitting. Oh, there's Telma. Thank you for being here. So, which is very interesting. And you hear that over and over again. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that he had never seen his guardian angel before. Zabdal has spent thousands, years going up into the levels of heaven, yet he had never until this moment, until he reached the 10th level, actually came face to face with his guardian angel. So that's why, many people say an NDE. So I saw my guardian angel. Well, that is, that is a rare order, and that is a very wonderful privilege. So let's get back. So Zabda, he's at 10th level of heaven, never saw his guardian angel till now. And imagine traveling through life after life, sensing a benign presence, a compassionate friend, but never quite grasping the image and form of that companion. So now Zabdiel saw him just a valley away. So he stood there in awe, not because he felt small or inferior, but of meeting a spirit that has accomplished what Zabdiel has dreamt of attaining, right? Spirits, what they do is they don't say, okay, you need to rise in the spirit world, and because we're telling you to. No, it's all free will. They say, this is what the next level is like. Would you like to go there? If you would like to, this is what you need to learn and become more better at, become competent in these areas. That's how the spirit world works. You're never forced. You have your free will, not only on earth, but even in the spirit world. So he wants to be at that level, and he knows you don't get a higher level by luck or by who you know. That's impossible in the spirit world. But a spirit that has risen through their own dedication and discipline, as in our fascination with athletes whom we admire, not because they are famous per se, but we look up to because we understand the work they put into their profession, day in and day out, to achieve the status they have attained. We stand in awe because we too would like to match their work ethic and self-control. So next, Zabdiel, shaking off his astonishment, this is what he's told the Reverend Jiva Owen. So I said, I know you for my guide, sir, for my heart tells me this much, and I delight to look upon you thus, for it is very lovely and sweet to me. In presence, you have been with me often on my heavenly road, but always just before that I have not been able to overtake you. And now that I have given to see you thus in visible form, I am glad to thank you for all your love and tending. But, my Lord and guardian, I fear to come to you, for while I descend into the valley, the brightness of your sphere will dazzle me and make my feet unsure. And when I should ascend to you, I think I should faint by reason of the greater glory which is about you. Even here I, from this distance, feel it scarce to be borne for too long. So what is he telling us? This is what's so interesting about in the writings of Spiritism, and not just the writings by Reverend Jiva Owen, but you can there's each sentence, there's things you can unpack and learn about the spirit world. So as spirits move, why did he say it's so bright from the 10th to 11th? Well, as spirits move on higher in the stages of heaven, they and the surrounding environment become brighter, more energy and less material. And what is that energy? It's more of the all-encompassing love from God, and that's reflected when someone sees a spirit, a high spirit. They see this bright thing. They can barely make out what they look like. And that's because the love of the environment of God, it doesn't illuminate from their body. It reflects, because they have this love, and it reflects and it goes back out into you. It looks like you can barely focus on that person. If you're on the same level as that bright objects, that person would look normal because you would adjust. The same thing, as you go from a lower level to a higher level, you adjust in order to see the brightness. It's not so bright and uncomfortable for you. If you just tried to walk up yourself, you couldn't take it. You said, no, I got to go back. But as you graduate, you don't just get a piece of paper in heaven. You actually, you change. You become less matter and more energy. Your physical attributes actually change. So, therefore, in order to physically meet his guardian angel, Zabdiel will require assistance. And of course, his mentor supplies the solution. This is what Zabdiel told us happened. Yes, for this time, he replied, I will be your strength as many times I have been before. not always of your knowledge, and at times again when you have known me near, but only in part. We have been so much together that I am able now to give you more than hitherto. Only be strong and with all your courage to the fore, for no harm shall fall upon you. It is to this same end that I impressed you to come to this place, as often I have come to you. So that Watt writes that he thought he wanted to walk to his favorite place to meditate and ponder about his future. But actually, he was motivated to be at the exact place and time determined by his guide. Now, Zabdiel is on the 10th level of heaven. If he was easily manipulated by a higher spirit, examine how easily we on earth must perform deeds or come up with ideas that we thought were our own, but were actually implanted in us by our guardian spirits. As Allan Kardec said, you are more affected by inspiration and on the earth in bad ideas because there's immature spirits that give us kind of junior high, middle school ideas all the time. So that's why you need to really get your conscience, filter everything through your conscience so you don't respond to those stupid ideas. But it just shows you so many things that we do were actually kind of guided by a spirit, by our guardian angel, and other spirits who don't want us to do well. So, given that, please don't doubt, even for a moment, that many of our actions we believe that come from ourselves are covertly placed in our minds by higher powers. So, yes, as I said before, we still have free will to make important choices, but we are led to certain episodes in our life according to our life's plan. In fact, I was reading the Spirits book the other day and it was talking about that. So, there's a question in there about destiny. And they said, okay, what happens if a man was supposed to be killed by lightning and he went to stay under a tree and the lightning hit the tree and then it killed him? Now, was it that you had the lightning hit the tree for that person to die? And here's the answers was from the spirits. This is in the spirit book. That's why the spirits book is so interesting. It says no. It goes, the lightning hitting the tree was a natural, a natural occurrence. What we did, the spirits, we inspired that man to go under the tree, so he would be there at the moment the lightning hit. If he had not stood under the tree, the lightning would still have hit the tree. It kind of gives you a little clue on how complicated everything is. So, Zabdiel's spirit guide then begins to construct how he and Zabdiel will meet in person for the first time. And Zabdiel tells us this is what he said. Then I saw him for a while stand very still indeed, as he might have been a statue very well. But presently his form took on another aspect. He seemed to be in tension as to the muscles of his arms and legs, and I could see beneath the thin gossamer-like garment that his body there was in like manner exerting its every power. His hands were hanging at his side and turned outward a little, and his eyes were closed. Then a strange thing happened. From beneath his feet there came a cloud of blue and pink mingled, and it moved across from him to me until it was a bridge between the two summits and spanned the valley below. It was in height little more than that of a man, and in breadth a little broader. This gradually came upon me and enveloped me, and when I looked, I could see him through the mist, and he seemed very near. Then he said, now come to me, my friend, tread firmly forward to me, and you shall not have hurt. So I began to walk to him through the shaft of luminous cloud, which was all about me. And although as I went it was elastic beneath my feet, like very thick velvet, yet I did not sink through the floor of it into the valley, but continued my way uplifted with great joy. For he looked on me and smiled as I went to him. But although he seemed so near, yet I did not reach him, and yet again he stood still and did not retreat from me. But at last he held out his hand to me, and in a few steps more I had it in mine, and he drew me onto firmer footing. Then the shaft of light faded, and I stood on the further side of the valley and looked across on my own sphere, for I had crossed over by that bridge of heavenly light and power. So, what happened? Zabdiel's guardian angel, through the force of his mind, remember, thought is action in the spirit world. And once you know that thought is action, meaning that you can think, you can create things, then you understand why we go through difficult trials to make sure that we start thinking better. We take out the primitive emotions and put in the more civilized emotions. We take out hate and anger and put in love and charity and fraternity. So, Zabdal's guardian angel, through the force of his mind, created that bridge. And the higher the spirit, the more they're able to conjure according to their will. This is, in essence, is why spirits and ourselves we should strive to improve. The more disciplined one becomes by following the doctrine of Spiritism, to be loving, kind, fraternal, charitable to all in all circumstances, which I know is difficult, I'm not there yet, yet exercising authority with gentle calmness, the capabilities a spirit possesses increases, whereupon billions of years from now, a spirit on Earth in an immature state will someday lead the destiny of a planet in the same manner as Jesus leads us. So think about that. We right now could, after training for millions or billions of years, could be at the same level as Jesus Christ, shepherding a whole planet, and he does multiple planets, and races and cultures through from the very beginning up, to where we are now and beyond. So just to let you know, we too, just like Jesus, could become the governor of a planet or planets to help millions of young spirits rise and become working members of the spirit community. What we've been told right now is the entire organization of the spirit realm revolves around promoting spirits to their utmost capabilities, to enable them to wield great power for the benefit of others. To achieve that goal, spirits must be rigorously trained to never violate the divine laws, while always allowing spirits their free will. Remember, we live in a just universe. It doesn't appear to us on Earth, trapped amongst corrupt officials and criminals, but this is for our own good. Only by living with the results of the lack of love and brotherhood can we see for ourselves the tragedies that occur when we act with primitive emotions. The philosophy is the same as allowing your children to occasionally make their own mistakes. So they will know, since you realize they believe they know better than you, the results of their ill considered actions. They must learn by doing the same as us. And we are no different. Now, Zabdiel, he reached the side of his mentor and for the first time has the opportunity to speak directly with the unseen hand that has for so long steered him to the correct path. This is what Zabdiel told us about the meeting. Then we sat down and communed together of many things. He called to my mind past endeavors and showed me where I might have done my task in better ways. And sometimes he commended me, and sometimes he did not commend, but never blamed, but only advised and instructed with love and kindliness. Now, stop there for a second. This is typical. And you see this in NDEs all the time. They don't say, boy, were you stupid when you did this, right? No, they always say, well, let's think about that. Let's show, we'll show you the effect you had on other people. They don't blame you. They don't say that you did something, stupid or that you were stupid. They never do that. Now, why? Well, first of all, they're higher spirits. And this is what Jesus said, that the meek will inherit the earth. When he said meek, he didn't mean the passive people that let everyone walk over them. No, he meant people that could take charge of any situation, but always be calm and forthright and professional about it. And this is what they do. They say no, because they know by yelling at someone or telling them they did, to their face, what they did was not a great idea, right? In a mean way. All that does is put up defenses. They are consultative with you, right? They consult with you. They show you things. And this is the most important thing to remember. They've all been there before themselves. They've all done that stupid thing, right? They won't say that out loud, but they've all done Anything horrible that you can think of, they've done it too. And believe me, when I've learned about my past lives, I've learned about horrible, horrible, horrible things that I have done. I was told, just to give you a little preview, I've talked about this in other videos, that I chopped people's feet off so they couldn't escape when they were my slaves. How, it's hard to get more horrible than that. So hopefully I'm an example of someone who can improve. Probably took a long, long time, but with the workings of karma and reincarnation, life after life, given trials that were probably pretty tough because I'm a slow learner, I became a better person. I'm not, where I want to be at all, but better than someone who maims people. So let me carry on what Zebdal wrote. Now, carry on with this quote. And when he told me something of the spheres on the borderland, of which I then was, and some of its glories, and how the better to sense his presence as I went about my task, to which I should presently return to finish it. And so he talked, and I felt very good fettle of strength and delight, and of greater courage for the way. So did he give me of his larger strength, and of his higher holiness, and I understood him a little more than hitherto of man's potential greatness and humility to serve his master the Christ and God through him. So it's the end of quote. So the past accomplishments of Zabdiel were discussed in a sympathetic and caring manner, with gentle suggestions of how to perform better the next time. Now, if we can all take that to heart and remember that as we're telling someone else what they have done wrong, and to be as politically nice as Zabdiel when he was talking to his guardian angel. We have seen the same consideration and kindness from spirits in Diego's account and other stories by people who have near death experiences. Now, let's get back to Zabdiel. So, when he parts with his guardian, we are always in view of someone superior in the spirit realm, whether we are in physical form or in spirit. There are higher spirits evaluating our performance. Again, not with malice, but with kindness and caring and understanding. For, as stated earlier, the goal of the spirit realm is the successful promotion of souls so they too can contribute to others. Zabdiel talks about his parting. That's what he said. He came back with me by way of the valley with his arm about my shoulder to help me with his power. And we talked all the way down and across. And then, as the ascent of the hill on the other side began, we slowly fell to silence. Instead of words, we communed in thought. And when a little way up returning, I looked upon him, I noticed that I could not see him quite so plainly and began to be sad at that. But he smiled and said, "All is well, my brother. Always it is well between you and me. Remember that." Still, he grew more faint to my sight, and I was minded to turn back again for that reason. But he impelled me gently, and as we ascended, he surely faded away from my sight. I did not see him again, but I knew him now as I did not till that time. I felt him in touch with me all the time I lingered on that summit. I turned and looked into the brightness of his sphere across the valley, but I did not see him on the other side. That's the end quote. So, what should we take from this? Our lives are precious, and our time here on earth shouldn't be squandered by stress over temporary material pleasures. Now, of course, you've been told this time and time again. Well, you should think spiritually, not materially. But boy, it's so easy to say, and it's so hard to do because we live in a culture that has a very alluring trap for us. It advertises happiness as within our grasp if we just earn a few dollars more and we buy that goods or services. It doesn't matter how the money is earned. They don't care, via legal or illegal means. Only that money that we had ends up in somebody else and that they're going to sell us happiness. It doesn't work. None of the products, homes, and toys acquired will accompany you to the spirit world. Nothing. The only thing you're going to take is what's in here, which is the sum total of what you've done on earth and your personality and your character and your attitude. Your guardian angel, God bless them all, attempt to tell you that whenever you pause from the daily grind to listen to them. Now, Diego, who fully engaged in his spirit mind when he had his NDE, he knew this to be true. Why else would he so willingly journey back to his family and face a difficult life? Now, let's go back to Diego. So he went up there, he talked, he knew somewhat of his future, and he knew that it wasn't going to be easy. So now, now, Diego's talking to his guides. This is what Diego wrote to me. The guides told me telepathically, with luminous words, to relax because I would soon arrive. Suddenly, I saw myself overflying my body again. A being appeared and told me I had to go into the body. I finally fell down with a dry and heavy fall, weighing tons, to see myself sitting on my bed with my eyes open and burning. So let me stop right there. This is typical. They always say, oh, I had to go back to earth and get this heavy body on. And it's so, it's so annoying. And when you're free of this heavy body, you feel so much lighter, stronger, more intelligent, of course. So this is something. We're in a diving suit, and we are. And the spirits tell us we can only see about 1/8 of around us, right? We can't see that much light. We can't see other spirits around us. They all are around us. Some people can. Some people can see other spirits. In fact, I worked near this one medium, and he could see spirits. And went to, I asked him, okay, what happens when you go to a Spiritism meeting, and at the end of the Spiritism meeting, you get passes. Now, passes are when someone sits in a chair, and then someone in front of you kind of moves their hands up and down, and there's a spirit behind them that takes a universal fluid, uses that human between the person giving the passes, between them and the target person, to help that target person help balance their chakras and cure things within them and take away stress and other problems. And he says what happens, he says it looks like these high-speed robots. And in fact, when people walk into the room to sit in the chairs as people give passes, a spirit takes them right away as they go into the room and puts them in the chair that they were always going to go into. In fact, when I heard that, the next time I was going to a chair and I just turned to another one, just it shows you how immature I am. I couldn't help it, just to see what would happen. And I turned, but probably I was always going. They're probably always in front of me and knew I was going to turn that way. I know I can't outthink them. I'm like a baby compared to them. So, and again, this person could see the spirits, and they move very rapidly. And in fact, he told us a story where he worked in a government office, and he in the part where people would come up to the counter and ask questions, and then sometimes someone would come to the counter and he start talking to them, and then his other colleagues would say, "Hey, that's not a real person," because they couldn't see it. He was just talking to somebody, of course, and they knew that he could see spirits. And they said, "No, you're not talking to the real person. You got to take the next number." So anyway, kind of funny. In fact, the great medium, Devaldo Franco, in fact, most mediums who can really see spirits, you notice they never get driver's license because spirits will walk anywhere, right? Because cars can go through them, everything. They can't drive. They have to be driven because that would be impossible. So people like Chico Xavier, Devaldo Franco, they could never drive. So let me carry on with what Diego said. I felt a deep pain near my heart, a pain almost unbearable and great difficulty to breathe. My body was rigid, my arms could not move, my feet were frozen, and I could not move them either. I could only allow small threads of air into my lungs, or else they would hurt. I felt dizzy, and the pain in the chest was intense. I was unconscious for a moment, but when I managed to move my waist, I closed my eyes and lied down. I was still hearing internal and external noises and zooming. The pain near my heart lasted with intensity for an hour and a half. I managed to go to the bathroom, feeling tired as ever in my life. I then went back to bed and slept for 12 hours. When I woke up, I remembered the guides told me how my wife, my daughter, and I would die. I saw my complete future and that of my daughter. I was told I would only remember fragments of it in certain moments. The guides told me that my life would continue as torturous as it had been, but with small satisfactions. It had to be like that because it was programmed that way, and the purpose, although painful, was very constructive. I remembered the guides told me that my life would not be easy, but that the future difficulties could not be changed at all for me, but it was a way to experience things like an exercise, and all would happen as it was programmed because the purpose was that I could learn and grow more. So remember that. That is so important. Now, first, here we are in Diego's NDE part 3. He's now out of the spirit world. He was told of his future. Diego's time in the spirit world was at an end. Unlike many others, he was allowed to retain memories of future events. Mostly, he would only realize what he was told after an episode triggered a recall of that particular event. Now, I understand that completely because my wife had an NDE, and this was the same thing. This, when I first met her, she had an NDE like 10, 15 years before we met. And she knew certain things. She remembered some things about the future, but mostly. And then, of course, I always listened to it because I wasn't a spiritist. I always listened to it like, yeah, sure, right? And then as we were married, she would tell me things and she'd say, oh, I remember that. Yes, that was in my NDE. That was going to happen. And it was just like, it's like there's a memory. And then you say, oh, yes, I was told that. Now, of course, the people like I was, and most people, and I don't blame them at all, it's like, oh, yeah, that happened after the fact. Yeah, I'm not going to fall for that. Or, yeah, sure, you just had an hallucination and somehow this fit. So, and I understand how people get, people who've seen this thing happen to, this has really happened to them. So I carried on like this, and some things happen like, But then a couple things happened. One is we went to buy a house. And we went to this house. My wife said, oh, this is the house we're going to buy. And I said, well, I'm not sure, but let's go and we'll call the real estate agent. And I called the real estate agent. They said, well, no, 2 other people have already put an offer on the house. I said, we're not going to get that house. Oh, no, we will. Because that house, I know. It has 3 trees in front. So we said, okay, put in this offer. We're third in line, right? And it never happened. And we drove in front of the house. And I said, look, there's 4 trees in front. There's not 3 trees in front. And so we got back to the house. We got a call and said, oh, the other 2 offers dropped and you can own the house. So we moved into the house. About a month later, this big windstorm came through and blew one of the trees down. So there were 3 trees in front of the house. I thought, I don't know. But that was interesting, was it not? Then this is during the time of the Great Recession, about 2008, when, all the mortgage deals just fell through. Well, before that, in 2007, there was like a little hints of this, but then I worked for a bank, and I told my wife, I said, look, the president of our bank says, yes, there's some rumblings about mortgage loans, but we're fine. We are very healthy. Nothing's going to happen. And then she goes, I remember. You're going to work for a bank that goes broke. But don't worry. The same bank's going to hire you back, but with a different name. That was her quote. Now, I did not believe that at all. In fact, I was so stupid. I went and bought more stock in that bank because I thought, hey, the president said we're fine. We're in good shape. Now, of course, you know what happened. I lost everything. And I was laid off, fired, lost a job, whatever you want to call it, when the FDIC came and said, you're shut down. You're all out of here. So to make a long story short, I was out of work about 3 months or so. The bank that ended up taking over, they didn't buy us. The FDIC gave them the bank for some amount. I can't remember. They had to auction it off or whatever. And of course, then I got hired back. But now you tell me, my wife was 17-year-old, knew nothing about banks or finance. How could, that is possible, but extremely improbable. That's what made me say, okay, I have to understand this. This is what made me find Spiritism. How can we have predetermination? And this is what Diego saw too. It's like, okay, well, my life is predetermined and I'm going to have to go through these things and my life's not going to be that great. I'll have some little amounts of joy, but yet he still accepted it. So why did he accept it? Because he knows that as you go through these trials and tribulations, you are modifying your character and your personality to become a better person. And to become a better person means you rise in the hierarchy of heaven. And that is worth the pain and suffering and the inconvenience of being here on earth in a physical life. And in fact, Diego didn't say this, but I would bet that he was actually part and parcel of his life plan. And that he knew he needed this stimuli. When I say stimuli, I'm saying things like someone had a car accident or someone's wife left them and had a horrible divorce, right? These are the stimuli that changes, deep within our character. Now, hopefully, if you can have some spirituality, you can learn the good lesson from this is to forgive and understand that what that person did to you, you would never do to anybody else because that really hurt you. And therefore, you would not do that. So, this is why we're here. So then, the other thing I think is Diego was given a glimpse of his future to keep him interested in his life on Earth. Remember, he said that this wasn't going to be easy, and it wanted to urge him not to disengage from life. The Spirit told him not once, but at least twice, that his life would be arduous. He would live through unpleasant circumstances and have to deal with them as best as possible. Diego was given a not so subtle hint to not leave before his allotted time. His goal is to stay the course no matter how terrible the storms that would buffet him in the future. The spirit world does not want us to leave before our planned life. Suicide, whether conscious or unconscious. Unconscious suicide is someone that drinks themselves to death, uses drugs or whatever. Through their own actions, they make their life get shorter than it should have been. And we are told by the Spirit that people who have committed suicide in a previous life also would have an urge to once more end their life at the same juncture and age in their next life, that they would have to resist the temptation to bail out of their commitments. Furthermore, it is known that life on earth is difficult for spirits who have lived on a more advanced planet and have volunteered to come to earth to help humanity progress. The shock of living in a chaotic and severe environment with injustice ever present is many times too much for a sensitive spirit, and these more mature souls may succumb to drug addiction or even suicide because they were unable to withstand the cruel environment they were transported into. So, Diego was given notice that his trials would consist of high hurdles. We are given a course of edifying experiences designed to remove the wrongs and atone for that we have committed in past lives. Most probably, Diego asked for his life and the events he would experience to absolve himself on what he determined he needed to atone for his past deeds. What is absolutely certain is that Diego has a group of friends in the spirit realm who are wishing him well and are vitally interested in guiding him to success. Just as a close-knit family will look after their cousin who is in town to go to college, our spirit friends worry about us and they don't hesitate to provide guidance where required. To have such a pantheon of spirits anxious about his progress means that Diego is valued by his friends and they detect great potential in his future trajectory. The evidence that he has built up relationships and credibility in past lives lies in his recollections of previous lives while in the spirit world. He tells us, this is his quote, regarding past lives, I vaguely feel I have lived among the musical waves of Bach and all that surrounded him, and also in the Roman times of Octavius Augustus, end quote. Spirits from primitive worlds and less developed planets than Earth come to us to mix with more advanced spirits to learn to become civilized. This is why we see the senseless violence from the lower strata of society, sometimes even the higher strata, and they are used to taking what they want. Whereas Diego has been reincarnated on Earth for at least 2,000 years, during which he has built up a network of colleagues, comrades who have been instrumental in guiding civilization in which they were placed. If Diego was an inconsequential player, he would not remember the name of the emperor of one of the most powerful empires on the planet, or even the existence of Bach. Somehow, in some manner, he had a significant role. In his present life, I believe that Diego has chosen to atone for past failures and shortcomings. He has chosen to make up for his mistakes in a fairly complete manner by living a hard and trying life. My sense is that Diego wishes to return to the spirit world so he may once again prove himself capable of coming back to Earth to help lead humanity to the next level of progress. Now, future events foreseen. Now, inferred to many that one could foresee a vast horizon and what was going to occur. In fact, as Diego tells us himself, his recollections come just before the event or after commences. The spirit world is clever. They know how to keep Diego in the game by putting the carrot just ahead of his nose. They are so smart. Their action was deliberate. Almost nothing is done by chance. Every word spoken to Diego was well thought out. Each subject fully discussed was done for an edifying purpose. As a teacher measures his or her words to a curious student, so does the spirit world interact with us. They are advised of our level and our cognizant, in the most effective manner in which to approach us. Here is what Diego first tells us about his memory of future events. Although I saw all my future, now I'm quoting, I shouldn't remember it. I do remember when things are about to happen and they do exactly as seen before. There is no time to change anything because the vision is seconds before things happen. I also remembered that I saw my mother would have a very long illness, Alzheimer, and asked what could be done to avoid it. They said nothing could be done, and I had to bear with the illness with patience, which together with other bad experiences would lead me to my conscientiousness growth. I had been told that I would have a girl, and at the same time, my father would die. So, let's end quote. Diego did indeed have a daughter, and when they were traveling together to meet relatives, Diego again experienced a memory of his NDE that surfaced after the fact, but had hints of the future as well, is what he said. One of the things I saw in my life review in 1987 had to do with a cousin of mine. The last time I saw him, he was 7 years old, and in the life review of the future, a young man approached me whom I didn't know, and he told me he was my 7 year old cousin, and the way he looked now, around 20 years old, was the way he would look by the time of his death, because he would die very young. He also told me his father, my uncle, although a sick man, would live till a very old age. 30 years later, he died at the age of 95. In 1992, I traveled with my daughter to my uncle's house and saw the cousin whom I had last seen when he was 7. So he had a life review in 1987, but he hadn't seen his cousin for a long time, before that. And so in 1992, probably 13 years, right? He saw his cousin. In the surprise of the moment, I didn't remember the near death meeting with the adult shape of my cousin. He was big. His round white face, big eyes, and thick eyebrows reminded me of my grandparents' brothers. When we shook hands, I found myself shaking, and then my body temperature increased as though I would have fever. The reaction of my body surprised me. It was 1 week later, when I was in the plane flying back to my city, that I remembered his presence in the NDE episode of years before. In the NDE, in a sort of hall, when I was communicating with the light companions, this young man saluted me kindly, and since I didn't know him, he told me he was my uncle's son. I accepted that his physiognomy and had something of my ancestry, but not totally believing he was my cousin. I asked his name. He answered Diego. He had also been named Diego by my uncle because he loved me very much and wanted him to have the same name. It was in the plane that shaking, I remembered my cousin told me the NDE about his future early death. 3 years later, when he was about 22 years old, my cousin was murdered. So think about that. To us, a murder is a random event, in many cases accomplished during a spur of the moment violent attack. But the spirit world knew Diego's cousin would return from the earth early. His cousin also knew this. All was planned before Diego's cousin was born. His life blueprint was etched. The moment Diego's cousin was born, his trajectory was set. Now let's talk about this in karma and predetermination and free will. So you think about free will. Well, the person who murdered his cousin, he killed him. Did he have free will not to do that? So this very question is what was answered in one of Chico Xavier's book. What the spirits tell us is that if let's say Diego's cousin was supposed to be murdered, he would be put in proximity next to a person who had the capability of murdering him. But that person who was a potential murderer has the free will not to kill that person. If that person did not murder Diego's cousin, what would happen is then the spirits would inspire Diego's cousin to go and meet or be near another person who had the capability of murdering him. And so on until Diego's cousin would be murdered by one of them, right? You had someone with a 90% probability of murdering someone. You do 3 or 4, it's going to happen. That's how the spirit world works. It's all probability, Monte Carlo analysis. It's all so complex and all so many intersections. And when you realize that, and we're all 7 billion people on Earth, it's pretty amazing. So Diego, from all this, has this is what he says about his understanding of our existence. And I'm quoting, "We are predestined cosmic particles in an induction to walk through a predetermined path of which we remain unconscious, fortunately for most. But we are always free to grow in our own consciousness. For no matter how predetermined the path is in this earth, the soul is free to learn or not learn the lesson, to evolve, to grow or not, to be wiser, to forgive, to love, because these are the only purpose of the all-consciousness to whom we belong. We will not be judged, for we only judge ourselves, which is the greatest growth. Each of our decisions on earth changes our consciousness, spirit, soul, and each one of these changes will be mediated by the total one. I feel lucid and satisfied of the grace I was given to stay or leave the earth with no implication of guilt, and I also enjoy to be bathed in this earth's tender pollen. The being of light is the most exquisite core of harmony and delight, allowing us to rest in our own forgetfulness. He is the fountain of our final alloy." End quote. So Diego, as a result of his NDE, fully grasped the entire concept of why we are here and what is waiting for us to return. Everything that Diego learned is available to all of us. We don't have to have a near-death experience. We have the revelation of Spiritism. So let me again show you the Spirit's book. If you would like, I would pick up this book. This is the Headwaters of Spiritism. Allan Kardec codified what the Spirit of Truth sent to him via many spirits with many mediums in different geographical areas. So Allan Kardec doesn't just talk to one spirit, right? He wasn't a medium. He asked a set of questions, and he put those questions out to many different mediums in different geographical areas throughout Europe, and only codified the answers. So this is important. This is why this is very different than someone who writes a book saying they had a revelation from a high spirit. This is many spirits giving us answers, all under the guise of the Spirit of Truth, under the leadership of Jesus Christ, the governor of our planet. You can get this book on Amazon or other bookstores. Order it. You look up Allan Kardec PDF. You can find all his books on PDF. So I would highly recommend the Spirit's book. It was my first book I read. It was life-changing. So Diego realizes his life has meaning, a deeper purpose than most of us know about our own. Unlike so many others, Diego recognizes, absolutely sees, he is traveling through a learning experience and performing as well as he can. If you can get that into your mind, you are miles ahead of everybody else, while certain in the knowledge that a wonderful, loving environment is waiting for him to return. If you can think of yourself on, a ride, let's say in Disneyland or Disney World, and that ride is going to scare you sometimes, it's going to shock you, it's going to move you around, but it's all safe, and the ride will end. And when it ends, you'll be back in your wonderful hotel room, right? You'll be in a great in a great place. Well, that's how you look at your life. Bad things happen to you, but it's there to change your mind and change your attitude, make you a better person. If you can accept that, you are so far ahead. And if you can accept that at an earlier age than I ever did, right? I was pretty old when I found Spiritism. You are so far ahead of me. So, as Diego tells us, we are free to choose how we react during our trials. And as such, don't be discouraged by thinking back about past failures. It's another opportunity which will present itself, and you will have the chance to live up to your own expectations and prove that you have changed and grown toward the light and love. Spiritism, the third revelation, the first being the Old Testament Moses, the second Jesus, the third is Allan Kardec codifying Spiritism, is here and waiting for you to find out for yourselves what Diego discovered. It is all written down and ready for you to devour it. Deep down in your subconscious, you realize we are here for a greater purpose than to be born, grow, and die and return to dust forever. We we are the cosmic particles. We are spirits. We are immortal. We are a form of energy. We are on a journey for eternity to ascend higher and higher toward perfection. Be aware of your voyage. Become more spiritual, more loving, and kinder. Now, no one's asking you to sell everything, become a monk. In fact, Spiritism said we don't want nuns and monks being in these places where they're just by themselves. No, we want people out helping and talking to people and being part of the community. And yes, you have to work, you have to make money, you have to feed your family, but you don't have to take part in bad things. You don't have to work for an organization that cheats people, right? You don't have to steal people's money. You try to be as good as you can given the circumstances. No one's expecting everyone to be a Mother Teresa. So, so if you can just make that leap of becoming more loving and kinder, a reward beyond your comprehension shall await you on the other side. Now, what I've done is I've written books all about reincarnation and my own journey in Spiritism, the 7 tenets of Spiritism. But I've also written, I think it was very important. Now, it all depends how each of us learn and how each of us are motivated. For me, for some people who want to say, okay, I keep hearing you have to be a good person. But what I've done on the series of 3 books, Heaven and Below, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and How We're Guided by Spirits, is take everything from Spiritist literature and say, this is how heaven works. This is the organization processes. This is what you are as a spirit. This is how you ascend as a spirit. This is what happens in the spirit world. And only by that can some people motivate themselves to say, oh, okay, I see there's some reality there, right? Because our current doctrines and religions is all fuzziness, right? You go to heaven, you may have harp music, right? And you're not sure, are you who you are? Do I change? Well, Spiritism tells us exactly what's going to happen, and I give examples. Now, on a more personal basis, I talk about my own journey in Spiritism, which is the 7 tenets of Spiritism. Oh, I did the wrong thing. Sorry about that. Which is the 7 tenets of Spiritism. There we go. And that is, I talk about the signs and signals I saw and what the 7 tenets are and how I experience the 7 tenets. Like the guardian angels are always with us. The signs and signals are always there. All these different things. And that's, and of course, I have this book You can get this on Amazon paperback, Kindle, or audio. The same way with my book, Heaven and Below. So these are things I put. You don't need these books. If you just read the Spirits book, Allan Kardec has 5 major books: the Spirits book, the Gospel According to Spiritism, Genesis, Heaven and Hell, and the Mediums, the Book of Mediumship, the Book of Mediums, which are very good for people who think they have any psychic power. To read that, it tells you all about different types of mediumship and different types of spirits you'll encounter. Very informative. In fact, many people who write to me saying, I think I'm hearing things or I see things. I said, look, before you get into it, read the Medium's book. Please, right? Read the Medium's book. And there's other good books about mediumship, but that's the first one you should read. That is like the first encyclopedia. So I would recommend that for anyone who believes that they have some medium ability to talk, commune, hear spirits, see visions. Read that book. It will tell you a lot. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for being part of the NDE of Diego, part 3, and God bless everybody. God bless.